All right. Welcome to episode 44 of The Future Belongs to Creators. Today, we are talking about Hamilton, and I'm joined not by Barrett Brooks, but by my wonderful coworker, Isa Adney. Isa, thanks for hanging out today.
Thank you for having me. I cannot dance as well as Barrett Brooks, but I probably love Hamilton a little bit more than the average person in general. So I'm excited to be here for this one.
Here's the thing. I wanted to do this episode. I was so excited about it. We can talk for a second as to why on Tuesday I was like, Barrett, we've got to do this episode because, Monday, Tuesday, there was a little bit of news about Hamilton, which we'll get to. But Barrett was like, yeah, that sounds like a good topic. Creative lessons from Hamilton. Sure. Yeah, I enjoyed Hamilton. And I was like, okay, here's the deal. We're doing the episode and I'm going to find a new co-host, not for the whole show, just for this episode, because I need someone who loves Hamilton as much as I do. And Isa, I think you love Hamilton even far more than I do, which takes talent. It's impressive.
Thank you. I've been working on this for many years, and this is the first time I've gotten to talk about it publicly. So it's a pretty big deal for me. I found the most Hamilton-esque sweater. I'm wearing shoes. Let's go.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, okay. Two things. We'll do red, yellow, green. But first, why don't you tell people just a little bit about what you work on as a storyteller at ConvertKit? Maybe the new show that you just came out with. And
yes. So I spend my time interviewing creative artists who also happen to use ConvertKit. And so we share their stories in written form. We have films called I Am a Creator that you can find on YouTube. And we just launched a podcast this week called I Am a Creator. So search I Am a Creator on iTunes, or you can go to convertkit.com/stories and you will find it. They are stories that are really showcasing what we're going to talk about, like the creative process, what it takes to make something that resonates with other people, and the real human journey behind that. So go listen to the podcast, subscribe, leave a review. Thanks.
Yes, definitely. And they're just fun. They're short. It's not a super long interview. It's not something that you need to dive into. I've actually listened to a few just in one sitting, right? Where you just queue up one after another and dive in. So, and they're edited by the wonderful Adam, who edits this show and actually all of our shows. Apparently we have a lot of podcasts coming out right now. So it's good. Well, we always kick off with red, yellow, green. I'll go first. I'm green today. I'm so excited to be talking about this. And also the marketing team, which includes you, just did a fantastic demo and showcase of everything that's been going on the team for the whole company. And that was just really, really fun. So yeah, I'm green. How about you?
It was awesome. Let us know in the chat too how you're feeling. Thank you all for being here. Barrett is here, by the way, dancing in the chat. So don't you worry. I am green, and literally no matter what is going on in my life or whatever's going on ever, when I listen to Hamilton, to me, this is the magic of great art, whatever that is for you. Even if you're not a big Hamilton fan, I still love you. This will still be relevant for you, but Hamilton is that for me. No matter where you are, you listen to it, you talk about it, and you're just green just for that moment. It stops everything else around you. And that to me is one of the most magical things creativity does. And you can do that for other people with the things that you create. And that's what we're going to be kind of talking about here. Inspiration that Nathan and I took that makes us want to create those moments for other people. And that's what, we hope for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's dive in. Talking about Hamilton, what's on your mind first?
Yes. So first, Nathan, I want to know a little bit more about what inspired you from Hamilton. What was kind of that standout thing that really inspired you as a creator? So much so that you thought, I'm going to do a podcast episode on it.
Oh man. Okay. So I walked out of the theater and it's just, there was something magical. And so I saw Hamilton a year and a half ago. So not the original cast, but still absolutely incredible. But saw it in New York in the Richard Rodgers Theater. And I just walked out with so much energy, and there were a few things. But I think what stood out the most was the whole refrain through the entire series, or the entire show, which is, I'm not going to throw away my shot. This is my shot. I'm going to make the most of it. And I've always believed that. But just seeing it portrayed so directly of these are the opportunities that I have, and I'm going to absolutely make the most of them because I have this creative ability. I have this thing, and I can make a big impact with it. And so thinking about that, like that was one side of it. Then I think the other main side of it for me was permission to have urgency. Like Hamilton has such urgency. Why do you write like you're running out of time? And so like I sit with that and I'm just like, that's how I feel. But I feel like sometimes I'm surrounded with people who are like, chill out. It's fine. You have all the time. And I'm like, but what if I don't feel like I have all the time? What if I feel like I have so much that I want to get out there, that I want to say, that I want to do. And so I have this crazy urgency that it feels totally out of place in the world that we're in. And this just made me feel like maybe that urgency is okay. And maybe I can bring that to all of my creative endeavors.
I felt the same way when I heard I'm not throwing away my shot for the first time. I remember the road I was on in Lake Mary, Florida, exactly the way the trees looked when I first heard that song, because I identified exactly with that urgency, like you're talking about. And I felt seen and I felt like, yes, it's okay. And that line, how do you write like you're running out of time? To kind of think of it another way too, my father-in-law last year suddenly got some kind of dementia. They still don't know what it is. He is an incredible musician. And with that disease in his brain, he lost the ability to create. He used to create music all the time. And he cannot do that anymore. And it's been devastating to watch. But on the flip side, the things that bring him most to life are hearing other people's creativity, other people's music. And he can still remember. I mean, he can't remember sometimes yesterday, but he can still recall songs that he created. They're still there somewhere. And that is powerful to me. But this idea that like we're running out of time, like we actually are. And why not create and be a part of that magical process? But it's not easy. Right? It's why not everyone does it. Like creating stuff. We were talking in our marketing meeting today. I was sharing things I've learned, patterns I've seen from all the creators I've interviewed. And the first thing was like, creators are terrified, like all the time almost, right? Like it's scary to make things and show to other people. It's really scary. And I think Hamilton for me really inspired me to keep getting through that fear over and over again. And I have a little show and tell.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah. So this is something I've never shown anyone. And if you're just listening, podcast, I will describe it as well. But I have never shown anyone this. So I, many years ago, created this little notebook where I pasted pictures of artists who inspired me. And then I'd handwrite a quote or something I read about them in a magazine. And I would read it for like a year or two when I was starting this huge book project. I read it every single day. And it was sort of this way to feel inspired and feel like these artists were a part of my mentorship circle, even though I didn't know them in real life. So this is my Lin-Manuel Miranda page. And I, printed this off the internet and I wrote these 3 things, and they each have a little lesson that I want to share with you guys because it helped me so much. And so they're from an article actually of someone who wrote about him. And they talked about how he'd walk while he wrote. And the guy said he walked 6 years to write this show. And the fact that this show took him 6 years gave me a lot of encouragement because it's okay to take your time on a project, right? I would beat myself up that it had been a year and I hadn't finished this book because my first book I did in a year. Why was the second book taking so long? I must not be good enough, right? And it just constantly, I would tell myself, I still to this day, it took Hamilton 6 years to come to fruition. So like, it's okay to taking your time doesn't mean it's going to be worse. It doesn't mean it's going to be Hamilton. I mean, there's no guarantee of that, but it doesn't mean that you're somehow less professional if you're taking a long time. It could honestly mean more.
That just hit me because I realized, so I've written 3 books now and I've written all 3 of them really quite quickly. The longest one took me 6 months to write. I'm writing another book and it is just taking me absolutely forever. Like it's just, I'm having the hardest time to work on it, but I believe that it's so important in the story that I want to tell and everything. And so even then I'm like, okay, all right, I'm still going to get this, it's not on the level of Hamilton, but I'm going to get it done a lot faster than 6 years. And that's really encouraging.
Yeah. And Lin is really big on Twitter when people will say like, I wish this next book of some series would come out, or they're talking about waiting for an artist to do the next thing. He's always saying, hey, it takes as long as it takes. Like, don't rush him. I love that about him. And then the second thing, we already talked about the one in the middle about writing like it's going out of style. The last one was Lin. The first part is Lin talking about when he was in total despair. Anyone ever been in total despair when you're making something? Yes. Nathan? Because I'm doing research and I'm drowning. So that's the Lynn part. And then he talks about having mentors. He had mentors in the theater space, the top people there, right? That he reached out to for help when he was struggling. Even Lin-Manuel Miranda had mentors and asked for help and felt despair. That helped me when I all the time. And this is what one of his mentors told him: don't get caught up in the details. Chase the moments that made you think this should be a musical and write those. And I've heard that from a lot of artists I've talked to before, like just write the thing that you love. When you're feeling really stuck, go back to the thing you love, fall in love with it again. I took this advice just a couple of weeks ago when I was feeling that kind of lost in the details. If you're a type A personality, it's really easy to do that. You start getting so focused on the results, on the editing, and you forget that, like, wait, this artistic expression has to come first if you want any chance of magic. The editing, all that's going to come, and it'll come later, but you want to be careful in the order of operations because it can really mess you up. So last thing, Nathan, I have to share, and then I'm gonna ask you a question, is something that crazy that happened. So I interviewed a cast member, original cast member, who was in the show for my blog. And through an incredible series of events, I ended up going to New York to see the original cast in person, and see him perform, see him dance. His name's Seth Stewart. He's incredible, as part of the piece that I was writing. And afterwards, he was like, text me, he's like, oh yeah, meet me backstage. And I did not expect that. I did not think that was going to happen. So I got to go backstage. I thought I'd just be meeting him to like say hi in person because we had interviewed over the phone. And he brought me back and he brought me on that spinning stage. And all the cast were like around me, including some like, famous people from like the show Community or Sabrina the Teenage Witch. My head was just like spinning. I couldn't believe it. And I saw Lynn, I saw some people, and I was just like, had told myself, I'm not going to go up to Lynn. Like, he's too big of a deal. There's all these celebrities, way more important people than me. Like, I'm not going to take up his time. I'm just going to kind of stand here. And if like someone kind of comes close, maybe I'll talk to them. I just had one of those, like, I don't belong here moments. And I talked to some incredible people. And one of them was Alex Latimore did the music. And we, start talking. And as we're talking, Lin-Manuel Miranda comes up to us and like reaches out and shakes my hand. I still don't know why. I still don't know what happened there, but it was just magic. And he came up and he talked to me and we had this whole moment. And the reason I'm telling you that is because he was wearing the shirt that you see in this picture, the navy blue shirt with the yellow artist. That was what he was wearing. So like, I felt like he came out of his notebook and came to me and just said like, dreams come true, keep going. And I think there's just something to getting close to the art you really love, because what I find is that the people who made it, you often really love too. And there's something about their heart that you connect with. And the more you learn from them, I think the more inspiration you get to make like your own magic. And so Nathan, like how has that been for you? Like what or who kind of inspires you to want to like be at that level?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like, I feel like music is a big thing, which is kind of funny because I don't do anything with music. I don't play an instrument. I don't sing. But then listening to these different artists, so like Hamilton, which I've listened to, 1,000 times, even like some of Lynn's other work, like Moana, for example, totally different feeling. Okay, another episode on Moana, it turns out.
I have like a poster right over there.
But just the level of artistry that goes into that is really inspiring to me. We were listening to, with other coworkers, listening to Macklemore yesterday. And it's just like, I was just thinking about that, the level of craft that goes into the writing really makes me want to bring my writing to a higher level, right? Because sometimes I can fall into this trap of like, I'm just here to teach stuff. If I get on a podcast, if I write a blog post and someone walks away having learned something, I did my job. What more do you want from me? This is nonfiction, educational writing. Right. And then I come across these artists like in Hamilton, and rappers, musicians, all these other people who there's such craft to the words, right? Yes, the music matters and everything, but like the words especially. And then I think like, okay, that feels like that calls me to a higher level that I can start to work into, work that level of quality into what I'm saying. And yes, it's still, I'm not necessarily trying to entertain. I am trying to educate, but I can do it through stories and I can do it through that level of quality.
Mhm.
So,
And I
yeah.
think it's important to like pay attention to those things because we're all fans of different things. There are things that I'm super fan of, but I don't necessarily want to do that thing or want to
Right.
create that thing, but I just love it. And that's so special. But there are things like what you just talked about, Nathan, that like you feel like this calling. It inspires you so much that you're like, maybe you don't want to write a play. Like I don't intend on writing a play, but there's something in the craft of writing. And you see the way someone does it and you see the way it makes you feel. And you're
Mhm.
like, oh, could I make other people feel that way too? And
Yes.
it's exciting to know that that is even possible, that we can affect people that way. That's what Hamilton always kind of did for me, and it still does every time. Like they just did that Zoom surprise thing on someone's live
Yes.
show. I think it was John Krasinski. Yes,
Yes.
his Some Good News. And I watched that, and all over again I felt it, because I was having one of those low quarantine days, and it was just that reminder that like there's magic here too, and creators bring it out, and they often bring it out with their craft as well. Like you're saying, that kind of intention, this is intentional. Like this didn't
Yep.
happen accidentally. It was so intentional. Even the music, if you love the cast album, Alex Lacamoire, spent more time in the studio than is ever usually done for cast albums, and he's brilliant and genius. And part of that genius is also knowing when to spend more time and when to be really intentional. And of course, when to like show it and let it
Yeah.
out there too, because there's got to be a balance there as well.
So you shared some great stories. I want to hear from you, like the moments in Hamilton itself, whether you're listening to it or sitting in the theater watching it. Like, what were the things that really spoke to you as a creator, or some of those messages that you felt like, just pulled you in the way you have to go create?
Oh my gosh. Well, there was a moment in the play that wasn't in the cast album where, spoiler alert, Lawrence dies, and you just kind of learn through a letter. And they read this letter, and they talk about like how his dreams died with him.
Hmm.
And that really stayed with me because it was like the new information that I was getting that I hadn't gotten from the cast album. And it was this idea that the level at which your dreams die with you, in the sense that you can't act on them anymore, but
Right.
also sort of thinking about the dreams that he had, and that many people have had for, equality in our country, things like that. And seeing Hamilton as sort of this visual representation that like people who had dreams and they died with them, but then there's this thing that like can live on. And that
Yep.
other people can take it up. Like you might not be able to continue that dream anymore, but you can inspire other people to do that. And that really inspired me to this idea that like, it doesn't even matter how far you get, which is hard for me to think about because I'm a very ambitious person, right? Like I have these goals and dreams, and I would love to get there, but it sort of took the pressure off in the same way, in some ways. And it was kind of like, just go as hard as you can, as fast as you can. And just let that be enough. And that really touched me a lot. What about
Hmm.
you?
Oh, there's so many. One that I'd written down when I wrote a blog post about this is like writing as a powerful tool. Right. So there's uh, in one of the songs, Alexander joins forces with James Madison and John Jay to write a series of essays defending the new United States Constitution. And it's just like, as that line builds, you realize what a powerful thing that writing is. And Hamilton sees that all throughout, right? Where, time and again, when people are speaking out against Washington, he's like, give me, give me a pen and paper. I will bury them, whatever it is, I'll write under a pseudonym. I'll, make all of this happen. And he views writing as just kind of this unstoppable force, right? He can be so much more of a larger than life character and force in the founding fathers and all of that, because he writes. And I think that's something that I've learned over time, and kind of like when I started a blog and started selling digital products, that I went like, wait, does everybody realize that through writing you can build an audience, and then through an audience you have like thousands of people in your corner who want to support you in everything that you do? Are you all seeing this?
Right.
And so, watching Hamilton, it was somebody who's like, oh, I believe in writing to this level. And then here's the story of someone who's like, oh, let me change a nation through writing. Let me change the course of history. And they believe it to so much of a level that I'm like, oh, I need to think bigger. I believe these things to be true. I believe writing to be an incredible tool, and I'm still playing with it on this small scale.
Yeah, the energy in which Leslie Odom Jr. says, like, and Hamilton wrote the other 51, right? Like, it's so intense. And they're talking about writing. And like, that's how I feel about writing. I have felt that way about writing my whole life, but I've never thought of it as important to like emote in that way on such a grand scale as something like Hamilton. So I think you're right, Nathan. It sort of brought that kind of coolness back to writing, this idea that like, yeah, this is a big deal. This is something you could shout about. This is awesome work, because it's very quiet and solo. And, you know, you think of it as a whisper, and there's something about the intensity of stuff like that I think it really fires you up. And I will say another thing related to the show and intensity, I was thinking about Oak is his name. He plays Madison and Hercules Mulligan. He's also in Station 19, which a little plug for that Shonda Rhimes show. It's so good. But anyway, he's incredible. And he has this line, those of you who know the show in the beginning, where he talks about like, when you knock me down, I get the back up again. And it's so intense and it's so great. It's a great thing to listen to when you're feeling down. It's just like, no, I get back up again. The intensity at that line is really empowering, but also I think the intensity of the actors of what they brought to this. Like, these actors are giving their all in this cast album, in the show, which you can all see July 3rd. And I'm sure the same is true for anyone who's doing the show anywhere in the world. But to me, it was also an example of like, what does it really look like to put your all into the thing you're doing? I know backstage, they were really big on saying that they were like a chef, that, you know, hey, someone's coming to this show. They paid so much money. They waited in this line. And this is the first time they've ever seen it. So you can't, you know, oh, I've done this 100 times. Let me just back off a little. They didn't do that. And I think that was such an inspiring thing to me as remember, well, like, and just ask myself, like, am I giving that level of like Hercules Mulligan, Leslie Odom Jr. intensity in the things I'm doing every day? Because I think a lot of magic comes from that.
Yeah. Well, and that, like, I mean, it just plays into, I'm not throwing away my shot. Like, these refrains that come consistently throughout the show. It's not just, oh yeah, that was great. Right. When Hamilton, you know, came to the colonies and or to the mainland, and you know, he's talking about, I'm not going to throw away my shot. And it's not like, cool, well, good, you didn't throw away your shot. That's like tied up in a little bow. Like, good job, you made some traction. You got through law school, whatever it is. It's like, no, it's constant. It's, you know, and so when that example that you're thinking of with the cast members, right? Show number 200 or whatever, they're not thinking, yep, I gave it my all for the first 10 shows or something like that. And it's not, I gave it my all, or Hamilton saying I gave it my all for act one of my life. Instead, it's continually coming back to, no, I got to show up at this level consistently in order to make the impact that I want to have.
Yeah. And I think it's a good question to ask yourself too, in anything you're doing. Like, do I love this enough to want to bring that kind of intensity to it? And can I sustain that for a long time? I met and interviewed quite a few of the original cast members, and I've read a ton about them as well. And one thing they all have in common is a certain level of obsession with their craft, with the thing they do. The music producer was obsessed with like a beat and how it could make you feel. And he would tell me about certain beats he made. His name's Will Wells. He's incredible, in the cast album. And they were moments that I had felt like their obsession, their craft, which they had been building years before Hamilton, kind of all came together. And I think that was also a reminder to me that not only make sure and find and figure out what is it that you want to do where you can bring that level of intensity all the time because you love it that much, but also thinking about like when things feel slow, because this stuff takes time, or when you're wondering like what to do next. For me, it's always go back to craft. Like, if ever I'm feeling lost, you know, go read a book about writing, go write. One of those two things, go read about a writer you love, going back to craft. And sometimes you do that for a long time and it feels like, what am I doing? You know, all artists feel that all the time. And, you know, you just never know when that moment's going to come where you're going to get that one proverbial audition, right? And all that stuff you've been doing for years is all of a sudden you're going to have a stage to do it on. And I think that's just magical, you know?
Yeah. So there's another part that I want to talk about, and that's the room where it happens. This is something else that spoke to me, and I'm curious what your reaction was as well. I feel like one of the reasons that I am a creator and that I share my journey and have a blog and everything else is one that's maybe not as okay to talk about or something. And that's that I don't want to feel excluded. I don't want to feel on the outside. I had this experience years ago at the very first conference that I ever went to. Was in Seattle. It was called an Event Apart, and it was a web design conference. And I remember walking down the Seattle waterfront after the first day of the conference, and I didn't know anyone. I was super shy. I, I didn't really hardly talk to anybody unless they initiated the conversation and talked to me. And I'm walking along the Seattle waterfront, and I realize that like all the speakers of the conference are walking like 40 steps ahead of me because they're all friends. They all know each other, and they're all hanging out. And so I had this moment of like, okay, oh, we're going to the same place. We're all staying at the same hotel. So do I walk faster and like join their conversation? Hey guys, how's it going? Oh, I'm Nathan. It's so great to meet you. We're all the same. Or do I like slow down and back off so I'm not awkwardly following them like 20? We're like, who's that dude? And I like couldn't decide what to do, and I couldn't get up the courage to join their conversation. And then so I kind of dropped back. And then they, found a place that they were hanging out as friends in the hotel lobby. And I walked through and I kept on walking because that was the room where it happens. And I wasn't a part of it. I didn't know them. I wasn't a speaker at the conference. And so in that moment, I thought, okay, I want to have that community. I want to be a part of what's happening. And part of the reason I set out to be a creator and to tell my story online and build an audience is so that I would get that invite. And it feels maybe like it's not okay to share, like it's vain, right? As a creator, I exclusively do things for my audience. I only put things out there to serve and to help. And then like over here, you're like, but I want to be on the inside, and I want this because it benefits me. And so when that refrain kept coming through again and again of the room where it happens, I was like, yeah, I want to be in that. And that's part of the reason I create. And it not only did it speak to me, but it also started to make it feel okay for me to name that.
Yeah. And follow-up question, why it's interesting as great. Why do you want to be in that room? Like, what is the deeper reason of why that makes you feel something? Because I bet it's not something to feel guilty about, but just curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sense of belonging, right? And these are people who create who I look up to, who create on this level. I think that's a lot of the feeling. Probably, I'm assuming, and I'd love to hear this from you, as you go from driving down the road in Florida, listening to the album, and then fast forward however long later to where you're standing on the stage and like surrounded by this incredible creative energy.
Yeah.
What was that like, making the switch? I want to hear all about that.
Yeah, that's why I want to hear more from you, because that belonging, that sense of wanting to be in that room is exactly what drove me to get there. I knew when I heard the Cast album and when I saw them perform at the White House, I bawled my eyes out when Anthony Ramos started singing in the White House. I was sitting on the floor on my laptop, and I didn't even know why I was crying, actually, until much later. And there was a sense of belonging, a sense of representation. I'm Puerto Rican, and Lin-Manuel Miranda also is. And that was really powerful for me. Representation is very powerful. And I just felt so compelled. I was like, I need to get closer. I want to be closer. I want to see this even closer, because if it's making me feel this way on the computer, I know that there is a lot of power by being in person too. Because also I've met quite a few of my heroes now. And what happens when you're in person is it helps actually erase some of the magic in a good way. It helps you really see that, like, yeah, they're just like you, like they are a person. And you feel like you could do what they do. It's very powerful. I highly recommend it. It's why I'm really big, like anytime someone I admire, like a writer, anyone's nearby, I go see them, even if it's just to do a book signing. I think there's something really powerful in that. And so being in that room, it did change me. I really, really think that. I think it gave me more courage. because I think when you have belonging, it helps you get through all the fear that you have as a creator. The more you have that sense of belonging, it helps. And I think creating is hard no matter what. But if you already feel like you're not represented where you want to be, or you don't feel like you belong or could belong, it's a lot, it makes it even harder. And I think it's also important to like think about when you have power and privilege, like where can you open those doors and start to give people that sense of belonging? Because, oh my gosh, what people will do with that is just absolutely magical. And then they'll open more doors. There's a line in Hamilton that says they open doors that were previously closed. And that's how I felt. I felt like I could dream bigger because Hamilton did what it did, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is who he is. And I will never forget that. I ended up going to see the original cast because I was willing to literally cash in, like fun fact, cash in this like old retirement I had. I was like, I'm going to spend, you could get tickets. It wasn't that you couldn't, you just have to pay thousands of dollars for resale. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Like this matters so much to me. I want to be an artist so badly. And I struggle with self-doubt. Like I want to do this. And just by even starting that process, people saw my passion. The person I was writing about saw that I was like, I'm coming. I just said, I'm coming to see you. I'm going to make it a part of the piece. He was like, oh, we can put in this friends and family lottery thing. There's no guarantee, but I'll let you know 2 days before. That's when they find out. So I booked the ticket. I bought my own, I was just ready to go. Or no, I had one like on standby. And then I was like, if he doesn't get it, I'll buy it for thousands of dollars. The price will go up every day, but I didn't care. And then he was like, okay, we got it. So I ended up sitting close and then, meeting everyone. And I wrote about it. Like I wrote so much about it. I don't know if I'd be like doing what I'm doing right now, honestly, if it weren't for the space that they opened up to make me feel seen and make me feel like, yeah, I could do this. It's very powerful.
I love the idea of you taking a retirement account, right? We talk about this. What a retirement account, it's an investment in your future. That's what we're doing. We're saying you should invest in your future through retirement. And you saying, yep, you're right. I should invest in my future as a creator. And, no matter, I don't know how conscious this was, but you saying, this is the investment that I want to make. And I'm going to take out of this investment account that I've set aside, and I'm going to invest it over here and see what returns, that brings in as a creator. We talked about like opening doors for other people. And it really made me like, what stands out is not just the cast, the stories that they told and the songs that they've performed, but also like the time that they've spent with you of like doing these interviews, seeing your passion, and opening those doors in that way. And then I don't know, I see you paying it forward so often and telling so many more stories of creators. It's really exciting. So I think you've made a really good investment. I think the investment that the cast members of Hamilton have made in you is paying off many times over. And I'm so excited to see all the doors that you continue to open for many more creators going forward.
Thank you. I agree with that. The podcast, by the way, I am a creator on iTunes. Subscribe and leave a review. The way I tell stories was exactly directly inspired by what I learned from getting close to the artists I admire. That was when I realized, like if art really touches you, if you get to know that person, you're going to get so much creative inspiration that's going to help you endure and give you the tools you need to build on your craft. If Lin-Manuel is seeking out help, then we all have got to do that all the time. And we get our best help from other creators. So I know it's time now, speaking of that, to share some creators, right, Nathan?
Yeah, it is. So Barrett usually does a musical transition for us, but he's not here. So I'm not sure what we're going to do.
I got you. Da, 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 na, na, na. You're welcome. Creator of the day. I will start. This is Anthony Ramos, who I already talked about. He was Lawrence and Philip Hamilton in the original cast. He was also in A Star Is Born. He's just amazing. He's also going to be in The Heights. I am not his PR person, but he's also going to be.
But you could be.
Yeah, I could be in The Heights, which was coming out this summer. I'm not sure when it will come, but it will be worth the wait, people. John Chu directed, who did Crazy Rich Asians. It's going to be beautiful. It's Lynn's other musical called In the Heights, also worth a listen. It's incredible. But he is also doing a ton of creating on his own. He has an album that is out. He has a YouTube channel. One of the creators I interviewed, Will Wells, produces music with him. He's incredible. I think he's going to be one of those people that everyone is going to know eventually. So if you want to get in on early on him, I would highly recommend checking him out, support his work, check out his YouTube. He is just incredible. And you can tell he just works really hard, and it really inspires me.
Love it. My creator of the day is Austin Kleon. He's an author. He's one of these people who I believe embodies this, the power of writing and using that as a force for good and create change. So he's got 3 books: Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going. Does fantastic stuff. AustinKleon.com. He's also just fun to follow on Twitter. He's got a great perspective on creativity. And I love it. Definitely check him out. On the resources side, why don't you go first? And then I'll close out with a resource that, well, if you're a fan of Hamilton, you already know this, but it's a good place to end.
Awesome. Well, my resource of the day is a real book. I have it here for you. It is called Hamilton, the Revolution. It is written by Jeremy McCarter, which, by the way, fun fact, Jeremy McCarter, I very much knew who he was because of this book. I read this book. He did such a great job on it. And when I was on the stage, that's actually what got me talking to people, is I saw in the little corner talking to Oak, Jeremy McCarter. And I was like, well, I can go up to him. You know, I don't know if anyone else can know who he is, but I was like, are you Jeremy McCarter? And he was like, yeah. So I started with the writer, and then Oak ended up joining the conversation, and we talked for a while, and it was just awesome. So thank you, Jeremy. I probably would have never left my little corner because I was just so freaked out. But this book, if you liked this conversation, you will love Hamilton, the Revolution. Nathan.
Love it. Well, I'm just going to say that Hamilton is coming to Disney Plus on July 3rd. You know, like, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, they're doing that because of Disney needs some content. There's a pandemic. There's, you know, their filming's been shut down. They're trying to fill a gap. So it's just a business deal. But when I thought about it more, I realized, no, the reason that it wasn't coming out until fall 2021 wasn't because it's not done or wasn't ready to be released. It's because it was giving the Broadway show so much more time to run. It was giving all those onstage actors so much more time for that to be an exclusive experience.
Yep.
And so I feel like it's just such a meaningful thing that, you know, in Disney's announcement, they thanked Lin-Manuel and the whole cast for agreeing to that, because there's so much of their exclusive performance that they had reserved for another year and a half that they're saying, you know what, no, in this time, that's our gift to everybody. And so I'm so excited. We only have to wait. What is that? 6 weeks? I'm not counting, but you know,
I'm so excited. I'm so excited because I went to this thing by myself. And so I cannot wait to now like talk to everyone about it. Like that exact, you know, Richard Rodgers, that original cast. I'm so excited for it to be a shared experience because we've had that already with the album. And now you're going to see the visuals, the acting, and see what it looks like when people are giving their all. Just watch it and just tell me if you're not like, yeah, like ready to go make something on July 4th. I know I will be.
That sounds good. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. The one thing that we want to leave you with is just take those chances. Realize that you can create in your own way. You can have the enthusiasm, the energy to feel like you're not throwing away your shot. And you can realize that your creative work can have a huge impact on the world. And that's your duty. That's your calling. That's your ability. So Isa, thanks for hanging out. And everyone else, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Nathan. Bye.
Bye. All right.